The cradle of Nigerian nationalism. Here is a piece of heresy. The British government governed their colony of Nigeria with considerable care. There was a very high competent cadre of government officials imbued with a high level of knowledge of how to run a country. This was not something that the British achieved only in Nigeria. They were able to manage this on a bigger scale in India and Australia. The British had the experience of governing and doing it competently. I am not justifying colonialism, but it is important to fix the fact that British colonies, more or less, were expertly run. There was a distinct order during this time. I recall the day I traveled from Lagos to Ibadan and stayed with Chinua Achebe that evening. I took off again the next morning, driving alone, going all the way from Lagos to Asaba, crossing the river Niger to visit my relatives in the east. That was how it was done in those days. One was not consumed by fear of abduction or armed robbery. There was a certain preparation that the British had undertaken in her colonies, so as the handover time came, it was done with great precision. As we praise the British, let us also remember the Nigerian nationalists, those who had a burning desire for independence and fought for it. There was a body of young and old people that my parents' generation admired greatly, and that was later learned about and deeply appreciated. Herbert Macaulay, for instance, often referred to as the father of Nigerian nationalism, was a very distinguished Nigerian born during the 19th century and the first president of the Nigerian National Democratic Party (NNDP), which was founded in 1922. The dawn of World War II caused a bit of a lull in the organized independence struggles that had been centered mainly in the western region of the country up to that time. Across the river Niger in eastern Nigeria, I was entering my teenage years, bright-eyed and beginning to grapple with my colonial environment. At this time, most of the world's attention, including Nigeria's, was turned to the war. Schools and other institutions were converted into makeshift camps for soldiers from the empire, and there was a great deal of local military recruitment. A number of my relatives quickly volunteered their services to His Majesty's regiment. The colonies became increasingly important to Great Britain's war effort by providing a steady stream of revenue from the export of agricultural products, palm oil, groundnuts, coconuts, rubber, etc. I remember hearing stories about valiant fighting by a number of African soldiers in faraway places such as Abyssinia, today's Ethiopia, North Africa, and Burma, today's Myanmar. The post-war era saw an explosion of political organization. Newspapers, newsreels, and radio programs were full of the exploits of Nnamdi Azikiwe and the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, NCNC, which later became the National Council of Nigerian Citizens, that was founded in 1944. Azikiwe built upon lessons he had learned from earlier forays in political activism and successfully persuaded several active members of the Nigerian youth movement to form an umbrella group of all the major Nigerian organizations. By the time I became a young adult, Obafemi Awolowo had emerged as one of Nigeria's dominant political figures. He was an erudite and accomplished lawyer who had been educated at the University of London. When he returned to the Nigerian political scene from England in 1947, Awolowo found the once powerful political establishment of Western Nigeria in disarray, sidetracked by partisan and intra-ethnic squabbles. Chief Awolowo and close associates reunited his ancient Yoruba people with powerful glue, resuscitated ethnic pride, and created a political party, the Action Group, in 1951 from an amalgamation of the Egbe Omo Oduduwa, the Nigerian Produce Traders Association, and a few other factions. Over the years, Awolowo had become increasingly concerned about what he saw as the domination of the NCNC by the Igbo elite led by Azikiwe. Some cynics believe the formation of the Action Group was not influenced by tribal loyalties, but a purely tactical political move to regain regional and southern political power and influence from the dominant NCNC. Initially, Chief Obafemi Awolowo struggled to woo support from the Ibadan-based and other non-Ijebu Yoruba leaders who considered him a radical and a bit of an upstart. However, despite some initial difficulty, Awolowo transformed the Action Group into a formidable high-discipline political machine that often outperformed the NCNC in regional elections. It did so by meticulously galvanizing political support in Yorubaland and among the riverine and minority groups in the Niger Delta who shared a similar dread of the prospects of Igbo political domination. When Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sultanate of Sokoto, decided to create the Northern People's Congress (NPC) in the late 1940s, he knew that the educationally disadvantaged North did not have as rich a source of Western educated politicians to choose from as the South did. He overcame this shortcoming by pulling together an assortment of leaders from the Islamic territories under his influence and a few Western educated intellectuals, the most prominent, in my opinion, being Aminu Kano and Alhaji Tafawa Balewa, Nigeria's first prime minister. Frustrated by what he saw as Ahmadu Bello's limited political vision, the incomparable Aminu Kano, under whom I would serve as the deputy national president of the People's Redemption Party decades later, would leave the MPC in 1950 to form the left-of-center political party, the Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPU. Sir Ahmadu Bello was a school teacher by training. He was a contentious and ardently ambitious figure who claimed direct lineage from one of the founders of the Islamic Sokoto Caliphate, Shehu Usman Dan Fodio. It was also widely known that he had aspired to the throne of the Sultan of Sokoto. By mid-century, through brilliant political maneuvering among the northern ruling classes, Sir Ahmadu Bello emerged as the most powerful politician in the northern region, indeed in all of Nigeria. Sir Ahmadu Bello was able to control northern Nigeria politically by feeding on the fears of the ruling emirs and a small elite group of Western-educated northerners. His ever-effective mantra was that in order to protect the mainly feudal North's hegemonic interests, it was critical to form a political party capable of resisting the growing power of southern politicians. Ahmadu Bello and his henchmen shared little in terms of ideological or political aspirations with their southern counterparts. With the South split between Azikiwe's National Council of Nigerian Citizens (NCNC) and Awolowo's Action Group, his ability to hold the North together meant that the NPC, in essence, became Nigeria's ruling party. A testament to its success is the fact that the NPC later would not only hold the majority of seats in the post-independence parliament, but as a consequence would be called upon to name the first Prime Minister of Nigeria. The minorities of the Niger Delta, Midwest, and the Middle Belt regions of Nigeria were always uncomfortable with the notion that they had to fit into the tripod of the largest ethnic groups, that was Nigeria, Hausa Fulani, Yoruba, and Igbo. Many of them, Ijo, Kanuri, Ibibio, Tiv, Itshekiri, Isong, Uhobo, Anang, and Efik, were from ancient nation-states in their own right. Their leaders, however, often had to subsume their own ethnic ambitions with alliances with one of the big three groups in order to attain greater political results. The British were well aware of the inter-ethnic tensions and posturing for power among the three main ethnic groups. By 1951, they had divided the country into the northern, eastern, and western regions, with their own respective houses of assembly to contain this rising threat. There was also what many thought was an inane source of chiefs, a poor copy of the House of Lords of the British Parliament. Clear-eyed pundits saw this mainly as a political ploy to appease the Northerners and Westerners who wanted their traditional rulers to play a greater role in Nigerian affairs. Initially, the British resisted any agitations for independence, often by handing out stiff jail terms for sedition to the disturbers of the peace. They knew the value of their colonies and the natural resources they possessed. In Nigeria's case, oil, coal, gold, tin, columbite, cocoa, palm oil, granules, and rubber, as well as the immense human resources and intellectual capital. Surely, Great Britain had no plans to hand all these riches over without a fight. Over time, however, it became clear to the colonizers that they were engaged in a losing battle. By the end of the World War II, Great Britain was financially and politically exhausted. This weakness was exploited by Mohandas Gandhi and his cohorts in India during their own struggle against British rule. Nigerian veterans from different theaters of the war had acquired certain skills, important military expertise in organization, movement, strategy, and combat during their service to the king. Another proficiency that came naturally to this group was the skill of protest, which was quickly absorbed by the Nigerian nationalists.